All right, they're just going to have to kind of look at. Lord of mercy. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Do you need to do a roll call?
We'll do that. Yep, we can do that. All right. Do we have anybody from Alamo City? Alliance?
Yes.
Or Mike Gus? What was your name?
Rick Collins.
Rick Collins. Sorry, I won't guess it. The Blacks, Michael's here. Anybody else? Okay. The Hun.
I saw Edwin Enduri. Did he? He just walked out.
We got the Valkyries. Caitlin was here. Did she stick around? Bark. Corpus Christi. Dallas Diablos. Twins. John Dale's on his way. He's in traffic, but anybody else? Reds. That a bunch of people were coming. Okay. Three people on. Three. Actually, and Joe's on just online. Dark. Dark. Paul.
Paula.
Okay. Dark women. Denton.
Yeah, we're.
Okay, good. Fort Worth. Galveston. Like in their city. Gorilla. And JP was here, yeah. Okay, Grand Prairie.
Yep.
Okay. You represent both. Park men and women. So Glenn and Robert and, okay, more Casey and Barbie. Kids didn't ever put it as 5.
Six.
Exactly, okay. So, perfect, thank you for coming. HEB.
I saw TD here earlier. He was in the room not that long ago. Yeah.
Houston Arrows or Chupacabras, Burt, Kingwood, Little Rock, Lost Souls, McAllen.
Travis is here.
Travis is here. Yeah, hell yeah, he is. Road Warrior, OKC Crusaders or Tribe. Tribe. Okay, sorry. Remind me of your name.
Jackson.
Perfect. Old School. Orc. Other Rugby Club. Round Rock Rage. in the course, I believe, they may be coming later. HTX,
Oh.
Oh.
I saw lights earlier, but they want to stay
Okay. San Antonio men, San Antonio Riveters, Shreveport, Drew. On the way, I saw Space City. PRRA, they're in a meeting, West Houston or Woodlands. Okay, any mean Woodlands? Cool. Ish.
Coach, pardon,
Coach.
That's.
Any other individuals? Anthony?
So Drew's here.
Yeah, Drew's here. From Alex McCall. Dodge is here.
Curlis is
but we
here.
already counted him. Or Sean is here, but he's in the other meeting, we'll just count. Okay, cool. All right, so we're good there.
Okay. All right. Well, first thing, guys, we've had a couple of folks who have passed away recently. If you hadn't heard, Maggie Rouse, was the chair of Rugby Texas, passed away last week. Earlier this year, Gio Bonilla, who played for Hans, had passed away as well. So we're just going to start off with a moment of silence for Maggie and Gio and any other TRU members that you're aware of, or people of our community who have passed. All right, thank you. And condolences to all of their loved ones and friends. Okay, so celebrations. We've had a great year. The Austin Blacks won 2 national championships, Division I and Division III men.
Thank you.
Yeah. We had 5 teams invited to the National Sevens Championships, 2 men and 3 women, with solid performances, throughout. And we're doing well at super regionals leading in. So just from a competitive standpoint, we're doing very well. I mean, men's Division I, Texas has won 3 of the last 5 national championships, and that's by 3 different clubs. So we have one of the strongest men's Division I competitions in the country, hands down. And we're solid and competitive, across the board. So from that perspective, it has been a really solid year for the Texas Rugby Union. Numerically, we've had slight growth. We are basically back to the pre-COVID levels in adult participation. Now, I will say that the men have come back a little bit faster from COVID than the women did. The COVID seemed to hit women's rugby across the country a little bit harder than it hit men's rugby. But just in general, we're in a really strong place when it just comes to rugby and competition and, people getting out on the field and playing good ball. And that's really our number one priority, right? Is playing the game. That's what we're here for first and foremost, is playing rugby. And so from that perspective, we're doing really well. And we're really, really pleased with where that's at. And I'm super thrilled to be in a position to wrap up my term as a TRU president with, a successful union that's in a good place financially and in a good place competitively. And that's not because of anything that I did. It's because all the work that all y'all are doing. Y'all are putting the work in and you're getting the results on the field. And that's just brilliant. So, give yourselves a hand, congratulate yourselves. I am super stoked to be able to say all of these things. So thank you.
We go back and we'll just go through like the TOLA champions and everything.
Sure,
You're on
yeah.
track, so.
Yeah, get on. So TOLA Sevens, our men's champion was the Austin Huns. Our women's champion was Dallas RFC.
They're first.
Yep. For the qualifiers, our men's champions were Dallas Reds. with the Huns as a runner-up, and our women's champions were HEB.
There first also.
And, and they both went on to nationals. And then additionally, Huns also got an invite to national sevens. Little Rock and Dallas women got invites to national sevens as well. And you'll see that when we go through the financials, that we spent more money on playoff travel grants than we budgeted. That's because we were more successful than we expected to be based on historical results. So that's great. I mean, if we're going to go over budget, that's the kind of thing we want to go over budget on. So that's terrific. 15s, D1 and D3, Austin Blacks, obviously, D2, San Antonio. Had a great season. By the way, Arnald's here in San Antonio for your roll call. So we picked up there. So fantastic there. Sharks, Hark women. Come on in, Edwin. Won Division 1 15s. Little Rock won Division 2 15s on the women's side, and did real well. So fantastic, really pleased. And it's, for me, I think it's always healthier when we see multiple clubs winning. I mean, Quins aren't here, but I spent the first 20 years of my rugby career, the Dallas Harlequins won every goddamn year. And it is really good to see now that it is, something that moves and is constantly changing. There's always new teams, moving into the top and moving along. So good stuff. Any questions on that? All right. So high performance, we do a all-star event for the women that we host every fall. One of the big things about that event is that we're hosting all-star teams from all over the country. So we made a decision a number of years ago that rather than spending money to send a team go somewhere, let's host the event and have the teams come to us. If we're going to spend money on an all-star program, instead of spending it on plane tickets, let's spend it on putting an event, elevating, our sort of status and role in the national rugby scene, and bring the teams there. The really good thing about that is that this year we filled it up, and we're turning other GUs away because we didn't have any spots. We're expanding the tournament this year to open up more spots, and we'll be getting money from the Senior Club Council, from the national body, to help handle the costs of that all-star event, since we're able to basically offer an all-star event that's benefiting the whole country and women's all-star teams from all over the country. It also really helps that we're in Texas and that this event is the first weekend in December. And it means that all-star teams from the north, when they finish their fall 15 season, they're able to go someplace where the weather is still, where it's still playable, right? But after they've finished their regular fall 15 season. So it really works out, and we're really working to continue to position that tournament so that we don't sort of lose that sort of default status where all-star teams from around the country go, oh yeah, we're going to Texas. That's where it's going to happen. Question that comes up every year is, well, what about the men? So where the landscape is that women's all-star rugby is still viewed as a selection vehicle for the U.S. national teams. They still look at women's all-stars and women's club rugby as a place to find the next national team players. For the men's Eagles, that has become MLR. The simple truth is that for the men's Eagles, their vehicle for selecting players is to look at the MLR and look at that selection vehicle. So as a result, not just Texas, but around the country, they're aren't a lot of unions running men's all-star programs. Midwest Thunderbirds is one that is, running a program. The USA Rugby South is sort of an on and off again program, and I believe they're trying to put something together on the Pacific Coast with the Grizzlies. So there is discussions at the national level of trying to revive men's all-stars, but it might look a little bit different than what us old guys remember about all-stars rugby from the 90s and the early 2000s, where you would go and national selectors would be looking for Eagles, because those national selectors are watching MLR games to find Eagles. So it is what it is. I can sit here and be an old man and yell at the clouds about how it was in my day, but that's not going to change anything. So we are actively, still working to grow this women's all-star program. And if at the national level, it looks like there's going to be a sufficient sort of critical mass of GU men's all-star teams to create an event or a competition that is worth putting money into, then I don't see why the TRU wouldn't consider participating. But us putting in the money to send a bunch of guys on a vacation to go to a tournament somewhere just for the hell of it doesn't seem like a good expenditure of the members' money. That's been the decision making or the thought process up to now. Any questions on All-Stars? All right, so on your calendars, Mary Graham All-Stars. Mary Graham is one of our Hall of Famers. That's why we named the event after her, helped get women's rugby started in Texas. It's coming up in December. By the way, if you know young women who want to participate, who are playing in college rugby, so they're not TRU members, we do have a vehicle set up for those young women to register at large with the Texas Rugby Union so they can play with our TRU All-Stars and play in those events if they're under 23 college players. So if you've got women in your area that want to get involved, don't be afraid to throw their name in the hat and encourage them to participate. Branded technology. I am going to defer to Ms. Young here.
All right.
And tell us about that. I'll just be looking at your slide and regurgitating what I see, and they can look at the slide by themselves. So
yeah, so we've expanded our brand over the couple of years. We've got some merchandise. We started really small with just, I think, a hat, a ball, and like koozies, and it's been really well received. And so we're kind of slowly expanding. So we've got, a couple of extra 2 balls now. We have like a vintage, and then one was a 50th anniversary. So now we have just a union ball. We have a union shirt, which was designed by a member, which is exciting. And so you can buy it online all the time. We'll ship it to you, or we've got a table out there. So when you leave the meeting, you can go purchase everything. Social channels. So as we've been trying to build our brand, we've been trying to just build our following and who's around and who's seeing us. So we've really focused on live streaming over the last couple of years. And so we're seeing robust numbers of subscribers. So whenever, like today, we went live, 5,000 people, they have subscribed to us on YouTube. So they got a ping saying the TRU's live. So that went into their inbox, which is cool. So our reach for that, the last 28 days, we haven't really had an event in the last 28 days. So these numbers are a little bit deflated, but I wanted to be honest about where we are. So like 3K views. When we have an event like Red River Championships, I think the D1 match had the most views from our Red River Championships, and then the women's D2 actually was the second most watched game. We got into the 8,000. So it was a pretty good event. And that's not live in the moment. It's also capturing when they watch, like people watch later, right? When they're scouting them at nationals and things. We definitely saw that. So that's really good. And then Instagram and Facebook, we've had similar growth. So plus 419 and plus 383. And so we regularly do better on Instagram, I would say. We definitely have engagement from our clubs and seeing more of your content as well. So we're trying to share that as much as we can. It's just me running it. So it's just one person, but on those channels, I would say if you can tag us on something, a game result, or if you did a community event, we're happy to reshare everything. that's appropriate. So just tag us and it makes it a little bit easier. And you can see our reach on Facebook is better than our reach on Instagram. So it's kind of a trade. And then Twitter, you know, or X, I guess is what we're supposed to call it, is kind of a weird place, but we still get, you know, decent views there. So you can see the most viewed content. It's probably kind of small, but this is the championships was our most recent live. So then and men's D1 was first, sorry, it's men's D2, men's D3, men's, and then a women's D2 championship were the top viewed. And then the Tola series was this graphic that we made. Everybody loved it. It was by far the most engaging content we've ever had. The summit schedule was then the next most engaging content. And then Park's request for coaches was very popular on Twitter. So hopefully you got some love there.
We
We
did.
got some applicants.
We have,
So
we have a new men's coach.
great, great.
And yeah.
Good. We were happy to reshare. Yeah, so we want to help our members, of course. So this helps us with our sponsorship, and when, you know, if you go to a sponsor on the behalf of the union, we would love for you to do that. This is the slide you can take to them and say, we're growing our channels. We have engagement from our members. We have engagement from non-members as well. We range, you know, from age 18 up to age 60. So you have all these kind of metrics that we can share. We're happy to share. And so those sponsorship opportunities, here's one today. The summit sponsor was sponsored by Aspire Chiropractic. So they gave us a bunch of change. So that was good. But we are actively looking for sponsors of all of our events. We'd love to have a sponsor for the championships, for Mary Graham. We'd love to have it for the 7 series. And we're happy to splash your stuff or your sponsor stuff everywhere. You can see on the summit site, Aspire is all over. They're on everything we put out for the summit. So they've gotten free market from us essentially. So you can kind of see the tiers there, and they just, as you would expect, if you're a bronze, you're just, you know, going to get a little bit, you'll get a logo on the website and things like that. And then all the way up to like Aspire, they're going to have a free table at the Hall of Fame tonight. They're going to be recognized at the Hall of Fame, and then they'll be on our streaming this year. So it's worth the funds, and we're growing all of our audiences as well. Anything to add? So that it's going to move on.
No, I think that's good.
Cool.
Any questions? All right, well, State of the Union, we kind of covered that in the sponsorships, but and we'll go into the financials here in a minute and let you know, the real measure of the State of the Union is in my view 2 things. How many members do we have, and is the game growing, shrinking, stagnant? How are we performing? Are we playing good rugby as measured against the rest of the country? And then how are we doing financially? Do we have the money we need to function and provide the services that y'all expect and that y'all require to get better? So growth, we've had some slight growth and membership growth year over year over the last couple of years. And like I said, we've reached back now to pre-COVID numbers, really across the country. And we were across the country, we saw that the game shrunk by about 20%, 20 to 30%. And then that first year after COVID came back in the 80 percentiles, second year back into the 90s. One thing to note about these measurements is that we had pre-COVID, the women's colleges were part of the TRU. The women's colleges left the TRU to go NCR. And so when you take those women's college registrations out of those 2019 numbers, you get where we're looking at now. And so you see a difference of about 200 people, 2534 in 2019-20 versus 2303 total now. And the difference, that 200 odd player difference, is those women's colleges. So in terms of the adult rugby that is part of the TRU today, it's about where it was pre-COVID. The women's colleges are now competing in NCR, so their numbers don't count in our totals anymore. So that's why you see that 200 person difference. And I say we're at back pre-COVID numbers. I'm accounting for the departure of the women's colleges. Okay. So that's great. Let's grow it even further, right? We've made, or say we as a community, not me as the TRU or as the TRU board, are making some changes in competitions. If you follow the Red River competition notes, you'll notice that we've had conversations with the D2 clubs. We're trying to move towards getting all the D2 clubs to have regular B sides. Right now, the D1 clubs have B and most of them C sides as well. We really want to try and make it easier for all the clubs to field a second team, or if you have two teams, to field a third team. So another thing you may have seen in Red River competition notes is working on reviving a Division 4. The purpose of that Division 4 is to be a growth division. It's a place where, because it doesn't go for a national championship, in Division 4, you can borrow a player from another club and it's not a forfeit. You can, as long as people are registered, because you got to be registered to play rugby. It's a liability thing. As long as people are registered, you know, if McAllen wants to have a B side and they can bring 12 guys to go play Alamo City, and Alamo City's got some extra players, or San Antonio has some extra players who can go and fill in that team, then play rugby. Throw your name in the hat, put that B side in Division 4, and let's, you know, get you growing. Because what we found is that if people are expecting to get another 23 to 25 players to field that second side, so they can field a full squad in their first team and a full squad in their second team, and not have players doing 160-minute marathons. The idea of recruiting 25 more players is really daunting. That's really hard to grow your rugby that way. But if you can recruit a dozen more players, you can have your subs in the first team who maybe only got 5 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes of rugby. You got a dozen more people. You can play that B-side game, play a D4 game, have a competition, grow your rugby, grow your club. So numbers, I think at this point, we've recovered from COVID, and now the new standard is grow the game, right? We came out of COVID and it was, let's, you know, rebuild. Let's get back to where we were. We've done that. So COVID's no longer an excuse for anything. We carry on and grow our clubs. Sound fair? Everybody cool? Questions about registration numbers, any of that? Yeah.
Yeah, previously before COVID, I know Hart played D4, and there was a written in the rules of a 3-player maximum for guest players. But it sounds like that might be a soft rule, or
yeah,
if that's
I think and Dave may be able to speak to it as our comps chair a little bit better, but we've been going through an exercise of revising those rules, and the general theme of the revisions has been to loosen those restrictions and make it more open and more flexible. So the original thought was we wanted some kind of structure around it because we wanted the players who were playing in it to feel like it's a real legitimate competition, and that hasn't been watered down so much that we're just playing Harlot Fest rugby every, you know, freaking weekend, you know, and really encourage teams to work on building their own rosters and encourage growth. And we probably we probably overcorrected or erred a little bit too far on the side of that structure. And the feedback that we got was that we maybe needed to loosen the reins a little bit and you know, help clubs, you know, take that step.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, let's move on.
You want to go to financials or?
Yeah, what was that one there you had?
These are my charts that I think are wrong.
Okay, yeah, let's, oh, yeah,
Well,
let's go to, yeah, let's,
You may chart your own, not yours.
let's go to, let's go to mine.
So if you want to share, I'll just have to see if I need to make you a.
Yeah, let me, before I do that, let me do. Oops, I'm gonna have to go that one. And one. That one. There we go. So take that up to there. All right. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we budgeted for an overall income of 100,000 in dues. And that was based on where we were last year and what we saw in year-over-year growth. Our actual dues collected was about $3,000 above that. So we had slightly more people register for and pay dues than what we budgeted for, which is good. Generally, the philosophy that I've always tried to use in budgeting is budget conservative on what we're going to take in and overestimate what we're going to pay out. So I'm, budgeting worst case kind of budgeting. And so when we looked at all of the, we planned on about 2,000 in sponsorship money. That was actually 5,000. And we figured all the things that we wanted to do, we would wind up spending about 18,000 out of savings in order to meet the budget based on income versus the things we wanted to spend money on. So that's where those first two numbers are. So we thought we'd take in, about 103,000 and then use 15,000 from savings. Well, we've taken in about 110,000 and we haven't used anything from savings. So we're doing well on the budget. We're, overall about $7,000 to the good on the budget right now. We'll see there's going to be some expenses and things that haven't come in yet. That'll change some of those numbers. So what do we spend most of our money on? Well, it's this big blue section on the pie chart. We anticipated we'd spend about 57% of your dues money on competitions. We actually spent about 68% of your dues money on competitions. The next highest thing, we anticipated spending just about 20% or 19% on admin costs. Admin costs are a little bit higher than that. We wound up spending about 23 on admin. And so where did that extra money come from? We spent, a little more on a few things, a little less on a few others, but we're really not that far off. We're actually under budget on admin costs. The reason it's a higher percentage is you'll see when we get down to the bottom to the Summit and Hall of Fame, it kind of throws our percentages off a little bit. And we'll talk about that when we get there. Next thing is grants. Now, grants are two forms. It's playoff travel grants that go to clubs that make playoffs. You see that we went significantly over budget on that, over $5,000 over budget. That's because we had more teams qualify, especially for sevens, than what we anticipated. We had some women's teams get invited to attend the sevens late, and that was, a little bit unexpected. And so wonderful. Last year, we only had one men's seed in national sevens. This year, they gave us two men's seeds in national sevens. So our playoff travel grants went over budget because we had more teams qualifying for nationals. We're not going to complain about that. If you're going to go over budget, that's where we want to go over budget, right? Player grants, those aren't actually just player grants. We probably ought to rename that member grants. because that is grants for coaches who have an opportunity to go and attend a national coaching event or get invited to, a top level coaching course. Level 3 is currently an invitation course. We do that for players who get an opportunity to go to a national tryouts. We've done that for referees who've had an opportunity to go and get developed at a higher level. We've even started doing it with some administrative things, people who want to go to national development or seminars or things like that. So if you are being invited to go do something that's sort of a high performance type event, whether it's as a coach or as an administrator, as a player, whatever, don't be shy about, hitting up or telling your member or yourself, if you're that person, putting in a grant application. There's a form on the website saying, hey, I have an opportunity to go do this thing, but the airfare is going to cost $600. Can you help me out? Typically, we do those grants are about $250. That's our usual number. We have occasionally gone over that, but we'll be happy to support that. And traditionally, the board has always been favorable, looked favorably on those kinds of grants. So that's grants. That's our third highest. All Stars is the next thing down there. And that's the Mary Graham All-Star event that we referenced. And what we will see, and there's decisions have been made or been a lot of discussions happening at the national level with the Senior Club Council. They've got money to help support these kinds of events. And it is our hope and expectation that for this year's event, we'll get some support from the Senior Club Council for the All-Star event. And part of the reason for us expanding it is if we're turning GUs away, then asking those GUs to vote to spend some of the national money to support our event is a tougher thing to do. But if we've expanded the event so that any GU that wants to participate can, then going to the Senior Club Council and saying, hey, help us fund this event that we're doing for the benefit of the whole country is an easier case to make. So now we get down to the thing that throws all those percentages of actual versus budgeted a little bit off. And let me scroll down here. And that is this weekend, the Summit and Hall of Fame. So right now, the Summit and Hall of Fame is showing that it made a $24,000 profit. We did not make a $24,000 profit this weekend. All right. We're still sitting here in the hotel room. We haven't paid the final bill for the hotel facilities. We paid a deposit. Once we finish the weekend, we'll be paying this hotel about another $14,000. We took in all of the money for the USA Rugby course registrations. We have to pay USA Rugby for those courses. Jamie McGregor from the national office, education coordinator, is here this weekend. You may have seen him walking around. We've talked to him. We think that that's going to be around another 11 or 12. So what that means is that this weekend, this summit is actually going to break about even. We budgeted it for about $2,000 to cost about $2,000, whereas last year we budgeted it to cost about $7,000. So that reflects how we've been working to make this weekend pay for itself. We also got a $5,000 sponsorship for the summit, which in the income is actually up in that sponsorship line item at the top of the spreadsheet, not here on this summit number. You count that $5,000, this weekend might actually, you could look at it as making about a $3,000 profit. So the good news is that this event that we started 9 years ago, and at the time we're investing 10, 12 grand a year to make this Hall of Fame and Summit happen. We've now built it to a place where it is either revenue neutral or slightly revenue positive, which is great. And we're doing that. This is the largest one we've ever had. We've got more attendees in classes this weekend than we've had in the 9 years we've been doing this. And we have more people at the banquet for the Hall of Fame than we've had in the 9 years that we've been doing this. So this weekend is growing. People come to this summit from all over the country. They don't just come from Texas. And so, you know, this has been a success, but not to the tune of making 24 grand in profit. Okay. So what you'll see in, you know, and this is here for the AGM, our fiscal year technically runs September 1 to August 31st. So the final numbers, once we roll in the checks that we'll write next weekend or next week in these coming few days after this event, we'll see that in the end, we're going to wind up pretty much dead on our budget numbers overall. And we're going to be pretty close to spending what we take in and putting that back to y'all as services without dipping heavy into savings and without, you know, taking on any kind of debt. So that is, you know, a positive thing. And frankly, that's the way the union is run for 20 years. That's kind of the way that it was running before I became TRU president, was pretty much on a, hey, let's spend what we take in kind of model. And that's what we're still doing today is, you know, spend what we take in, put all that services back to you. And to the extent that we need to invest a little bit more of our savings to build up something like the Mary Graham All-Stars or like this summit weekend, we do that. But the goal is to make those events as revenue neutral as we can, so that then we can invest that savings in some other program, like maybe a men's all-star team, if that comes up. Any questions? In our expenses? Sure. We considered and talked about a possible increase in dues this year, and we didn't do it because we haven't gone up on dues in quite a while. TRU's been at 50 for almost a decade. Yeah. We thought about increasing dues, not so much because we were necessarily unable to fund things, but it's been my experience that if you keep dues at the same place for a long time and inflation keeps going up and up and up, and then you try and increase your dues by $10 or $15 because you haven't done it, people lose their minds. Legitimately so. They're like, what do you mean? What, you know, that's a 30% jump in 1 year or something. And I almost am of the opinion that you'd be better off to increase it a little bit every 2 or 3 years and stay ahead of it. We didn't do that because we got a heads up from the national level that a national dues increase was coming. And you'll notice that your national USA Rugby dues have gone up by $5 per player this year. I will tell you that the national office actually raised dues $10 per player. The senior club council, when you go and register, you give USA Rugby $35. You give the senior club council, which runs club rugby, adult club rugby for the country, 15. That's what we use to pay for national championships, national sevens, those kinds of things. The senior club council decided to absorb $5 of that dues increase. They had enough money in their war chest from the $15 a head that they collect to say, we'll basically pass on to USA Rugby the other $5 a head, so that our players would only see a net $5 increase in dues, and that's to the national office. So that's the decision that was made, and so from the TRU level, I got the numbers from our treasurer this summer, looked at where we were at just to make sure that we weren't running way over, John, and that we didn't have any unexpected expenses. and decided to hold the line on TRU dues this year. I don't necessarily expect anything unusual or unexpected next year, but I'm not going to be the president next year. So I'm a little hesitant to make promises that I won't be in a position to keep, if that's fair. But when I look at what I anticipate in expenses and the knowledge that I have today, I don't see anything unexpected that might be coming up. Now, all of these numbers are going to reflect your standard inflation, right? So when you look at board travel, well, if it costs more money in gas or airfare to send a board member somewhere that they need to go, that's going to show up in these numbers, right? And, you're going to see things that are, inflation is inflation. We're not immune to it. But we're not draining the savings account right now. So if the dues you're paying are covering the services that you're receiving, and you're not dissatisfied with the level of service that you're getting, then the only reason to pay more dues is if there's more services that you want. And you're like, yeah, we'll pay an extra $5 or $10 a head so that we can have X. Right? That would make sense. But again, I'm not going to be the president. So, I'm not making promises. Just that's kind of where I see it. Does that answer your question, John? Got about 99,000 in 98,000, I think, in savings. $95,000 in savings right now. Interest earned this year was about 10 grand. So, we're doing all right, doing well. I don't think there's anything, now, one thing that I have normally presented every year when I do this that I have not presented this year, and this is really, again, out of respect to whoever succeeds me as president, is I usually throw up a proposed budget that hasn't been approved yet, but is sort of my swag on what I think the budget for next year will be. I did not do that this year, but I can tell you that my proposed budget is almost always taking the previous year's numbers, putting a slight conservative tweak on them. I project flat growth rather than counting on growth. I project a 3% increase in costs rather than counting on costs to stay the same, that kind of thing. So, you could look at these numbers and you could do your own quick swag of a proposed budget if I were to put one out there. But, that's, again, unless if you, the members, are not getting something that you want, and you can articulate what that thing is, that's, it's just math. We put that in the budget, figure out what it'll run and how we might fund it. If you as the members are generally satisfied with the services you're receiving, well, the numbers show that the services you're receiving cost what they cost. And right now dues are covering that. Any questions? I mean, you go ahead and tear me up, fellas. I won't hold a grudge. All right. Well, that's really the financials, guys. So I'm going to yield the screen back to Wendy so that she can put the rest of the slides back up.
All right, I think we're on registration.
Okay.
Want me to do it, or you want me to keep it?
Let me.
Oh, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I'm looking at. Have you shared?
Oh, do I need to share again?
I
Sorry.
think you might need to share again. I think I stopped sharing.
Yeah, you did. Like it. Share.
I see Jeff Wegmab on there. Hello, Jeff. Hey, there we are. So yeah, so I already mentioned this. You know, the dues per player have gone up. So you're looking at $40 for USA Rugby, $15 for Senior Club Council, $50 for Texas Rugby Union, and then that other $4.15 are the various processing fees and whatnot that the Rugby Explorer system charges. The reason that coaches and match officials pay more is to cover the U.S. Olympic Committee Safe Sport background check that is required for coaches and referees. And the reason that it is not even higher than what you see is that the Senior Club Council and the TRU both opted to not charge anything additional to coaches and referees. If you may remember, some of you may remember back in the day, TRU used to match whatever USA Rugby charged dollar for dollar. So if USA Rugby charged $65 a head to a coach, TRU charged $65 a head to a coach. We stopped doing that. We just charge $50, across there. Senior Club Council only charges its $15 to players, does not charge coaches at all for that Senior Club Council fee. And those are things that both the TRU and the Senior Club Council did to try and soften that financial blow that where coaches and referees were having to pay more, because in the club administrators around the country, both TRU and at the council, all of my counterparts in the other unions felt like coaches and referees are critical to growing the game. Why do we want to put that additional financial burden on them? And if your clubs are paying the coaches and the referees and paying their registration fees, well, guess what? They're paying that out of your club dues that you're paying your club. So it's still coming back to you, right? Any way you cut it, we're putting that burden on there. So we're trying to mitigate that cost. Now, if you've got questions, I've mentioned Senior Club Council and its budgeting several times in the context of Mary Graham All-Stars, in the context of dues and registration, in the context of them putting on national championships. David Dodge, who's back there at the back, he's a member of our TRU board. He's the Division I rep on the TRU board. He is also now the treasurer of the Senior Club Council. He negotiated our community agreement this year. A couple of years ago, he helped us get a increase in the insurance deductible that USA Rugby offered with their insurance without any increase in dues to members. And he was instrumental in helping us get the Senior Club Council to soften that hit on the USA Rugby dues increase this year. And if you got specific questions about that kind of stuff, we can either give the floor to David if you want to ask those questions, or you can hit him up. Probably you want to hit him up now because he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame tonight. Congratulations, David. And tomorrow morning is not the time. Tomorrow morning is not the time to ask those questions. So if you got a question, hit him up now or right after the meeting or shoot him an email next week. Yeah, David.
I do want to say something about this. In the community agreement that the senior club council signed with USA Rugby, the annual agreement that basically kind of spells out what they're supposed to do for us in exchange for dues and some other things. We did agree to try and meet some metrics for compliance for match officials and administrators with the safe sport program. So here's what I'd say about that. I'm registered as a referee, registered and sign up as a referee every year. I don't know why, because I didn't referee any matches. So if you're not gonna, if you've got somebody like that, or if you are that person and you're not gonna referee matches, I wouldn't bother registering as a referee. If you want to referee matches, I'd say register with the CRA and get on that schedule. And that way you won't have to take safe sport. Same thing for administrators. There are two different types of administrators in RX. One is the team administrator. And that is the level of authority within RX that allows you to do things like fill out the match day scoring, use build rosters within match day app. The other level is the club administrator, and that's the level that you need to comply with safe sport on. And the real defining difference there is the fact that as a club administrator, you've got access to individual player information, their home address or date of birth, all those sorts of personally identified information. And that's why you've got a higher level of compliance. But we've got some metrics that we've agreed to try and meet this year. So what I would say is don't sign up for something that requires you to take safe sport if you're not really in that.
Because if you register and then you don't finish the safe sport course, then it looks bad on our compliance.
Yeah, and for coaches, same thing for coaches. And we are gonna, USA Rugby is going to start making it where you cannot be listed as a coach on a roster in match day if you're not compliant. That was not the case last year.
And it's all online modules that you fill out. So it's not any additional cost. It's already baked into what you're paying in the dues anyway. So it's really just you taking the time to go through and take that online module. I don't know about y'all, but my company makes me do that kind of stuff every year anyway. So, it's the same sort of information that sort of goes over reporting obligations and what you should and should not do, which I would hope would be intuitive to most of us, but it is important. So to be a valid club, USA Rugby has some metrics there to be a club in good standing in the system. You've got to have a level 1 or higher certified coach. Typically, we've been in 100% compliance with that in our clubs across the union every year. We have been really since we started this summit. That's part of the reason we originally created this event 9 years ago, was to be compliant with that coach requirement and make sure that everybody had an opportunity to get somebody certified. You have somebody registered with that administrator role. You need somebody registered as a club administrator who can, get to that RX data and make those changes. And for 15s, 18 players makes a club. You don't have to have 23, you don't have to have 30, you need 18. Now, I can tell you from the data that we've kept for TRU over the last decade, what we've found is that if you don't have at least 25 registered members, your odds of having forfeits during the season go up dramatically. And if you get 26 to 30 members, you're on the bubble. And if you get more than 30 members per side you're putting on the field, you're probably going to be good in terms of, forfeits drop almost to zero if you have, 30 members per side. That's just how it seems to work. And I think we all know that you have 30 members, you probably got 5 people who don't hardly ever show up, and you got another 5 who show up now and then, so that makes sense. And then if you got about 20 hardcore left, you're good, right? those numbers start to break down when you start to get to clubs with 3 and 4 sides. Because like, for example, if you were to look at the Huns, they had 160 registered members this year. Well, that's because they took an old boys tour to Argentina in September and had 55 old boys sign up and get registered so they could go on that Argentina tour. So the Huns don't really have 160 players. Right? That's just not true. Yeah, Art.
So how does that affect, not even affect necessarily, but what about the D4 clubs that are trying to get started
So
or trying?
So
to
we got two cases there. So we've got brand new clubs that have just applied for TRU membership and start out in either D4 or D3, depending upon, various factors and arguments that they present to the competitions committee saying, this is who we have and this is our level of expertise. And our standard for those clubs has them meet this threshold in order to be in good standing. We actually have those brand new clubs that are applying, put up a deposit. We give them a series of dates where they need to meet their registration targets. And so we get those brand new clubs up to that standard pretty quickly. For existing clubs, that's where it's a little more lenient because you may have a club that's been a long-standing club for years, and then it starts to struggle a little bit and lose numbers. And in particular, we had D3 women's clubs that might be, in some cases, looking at 2 or 7 or 8 players, total, and we're playing D3. For those clubs, we really want to try and push and meet this standard as if at all possible. For D4, we're not going to stop you from playing. This is about USA Rugby's, definition of what is a club in their data, what they think is a viable club in good standing in their data. If you would, the real problem would be if you only had 12 members sign up and then you were trying to go and play in a national championship event, USA Rugby would say your club's not eligible. I don't think we're going to have any clubs that only have 12 people sign up who are going to qualify for national playoffs. That's really where USA Rugby's enforcement hits the road, is they say, all right, now you're going to do something that's a national pathway event and you're not in good standing. It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen, right?
I just wanted to make sure that if there were clubs that didn't necessarily meet that threshold, and D4 is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That they could still be in good standing if they're paying their financials.
Yeah,
and all the things
if
that-
you hit
There's like an asterisk next to women's D3 and men's D4.
yeah, if you're hitting,
You do what you need to do.
if you're hitting 14 players and you're showing up and you're playing your D4 games and you're borrowing a player every week to fill out the team, we're thrilled that you're playing rugby.
Thanks, sure. Solid.
Well, real quick, we'll get you, Rob, other Rob. The dashboard, we had a lot of problems with coaches not knowing they weren't certified and things like that. Now USA Rugby is going to send you a monthly email if you haven't done your stuff. So there is no more, like, we were very lenient last year, like, just get it done before your first game. No, like, you need to get this stuff done. You're going to start getting emails. We're going to annoy you. So this is your dashboard. So when you log into my account, if you're a coach right now and you log in, you'll probably see these as well. This is the club one, but so you have to renew your fee, your club fee. It's $50 and it goes to USA Rugby. We don't have a fee for clubs. And then you have to have a coach on your roster. It's going to be read until they've done that background check. That's every 2 years now. So you don't have to do it every year anymore. So that's good news. Like, mine's coming up and I got an email yesterday. So if you're in this yearly cycle, then you probably got an email. And then the player status, it's actually 8. 18 is we made up a number. So it's 8 because it's 7s is what their threshold is. So you'll turn green once you've got 8 players, but just to make that clear, we get a lot of questions about that.
Yeah. Shoot.
So
Hang on, we got one here, then we'll go back there. Yeah.
When you mean minimum of 18 registered players for each side, are you defining side as division or side as in like men's side, women's side?
As a division. So in other words, if you're playing, if the Blacks for some reason, and I don't see it happening, but if the Blacks for some reason had only 45 players registered this season, then we would be having a conversation at the competition committee level, asking them, hey man, do you really have a third side? Are you sure? Because 15 players a side and player movement rules between divisions, that's probably not going to work, right? I don't see that happening. But that would be where you'd have that concern, because when you're playing in multiple divisions, you do have those limitations on players moving between sides and between divisions. And if you're not running at least 18 players a side, I don't know how you make it work.
Yeah, and I think we have stated, I'm just pulling it up, there's stated, like if you have multiple sides. So let's see, like October 1st, 23 players for your first side, 46 players for, you have a second side, 69 players for a third side. So
But-
those are already stated like on our website of our recommended numbers, and it's based off this data that we've done for.
Yeah, and like I said, the data shows 25 players a side, you're on the bubble, 30 players a side, you're good. That's what the data shows. If you're running less than 30 players per side, so you say you're running D2 and D3, or you're running D1 and D3, and you're running less than 60 players, then you really need dedicated players. You really need coaches and administrators that are on top of these players, making sure they're turning out for trainings and games. You need to be looking carefully at your injury management, make sure that you're maintaining the depth. And you probably need to be willing to play A-side games with less than an 8-person bench. Right? You just say, okay, well, we're going to go play 1980s rugby and we'll run 17 players aside. I see Nordy smiles. I know John knows what I'm talking about. So that's really where it comes from. We had another question back here.
So if it's just 8 players, though, we get a COI at the year.
Yes.
Yeah, you should, yeah.
Okay.
Right. So that's a good point. So
Yeah.
Art, and to your point, a COI, a certificate of insurance from USA Rugby, that you could give the city park that you play at, or the school where you're practicing, or wherever, to say, yeah, we have liability insurance, we're covered. You need at least 8 registered players, a coach, and that club fee paid in order for USA Rugby to give you that certificate that lets you tell the city, yeah, we have liability insurance, we're covered.
And I would apply for that as soon as you can, once you get those, like players, I've heard it's taking a long time to get those.
Yeah, Dave.
Just to reiterate what Wendy said on the coaching piece, we found we were lenient as we could be in the spring especially, but the coaches process is taking a lot longer than you think. Just because you complete the module, you hit send, you're not walking on the field immediately. Not this year. All right? We had a long delay on getting the stuff back from USA. It's not up to us, it's up to them. I don't know what their process is. I don't know if it's going to be better or worse this year, but we're going to be tighter on that.
Well,
It's the background check.
And so going back to the community agreement and what Dodgy was talking about in metrics, one of the things that we negotiated, or I should say David negotiated in that agreement, was some more accountability measures for the USA national office, and then performing the tasks that they need to perform, and including the staffing that they provide to do those things. Because one of the ways that they've made up their budget numbers is to not hire the staff that we expected they would hire to handle things like club rugby. So that's part of the negotiation process with USA Rugby, is to make sure that they're accountable and staffed to provide the services that they need to provide. With the background checks specifically, USA Rugby is not background checking you. They've got a vendor that they send that information to that is doing that background check. And if that vendor is slow, USA Rugby may be sympathetic to our plight, but they can't make the background check go faster than it goes.
And there's like a button you have to go click in the account center too, to submit the background check. So it's like, you've got to be in your My Account, like tell your coach, like, you've got to get in that RX My Account and see what the banner says.
Now, the good news for us, and it's also one of the reasons why maybe some of our checks might take a little bit longer, has to do with our seasonality. So you've got teams in the Northeast and the Midwest who are starting their cup season now. They play a fall season. They got to get it in before the snow comes. They're getting fired up right now. So at this point, if the folks at USA Rugby are looking to prioritize a coach's registration and they got a coach in upstate New York who's got a cup match next weekend, that coach is getting their stuff hopefully processed before some guy in Texas whose league season doesn't start until November or December. Right? So get your coaches registered now, get your work in now, and you should be good. Right? But if you wait until the Friday before your first cup game in January, that might not go well.
All right, we gotta speed up, Kirk. We're way behind.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, Mikhail, I didn't know if you wanted to speak on this slide or I can just run through dates, whatever you want to do.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we've talked about this at the committee, and we're still working on the Gulf Coast Super Regional. There's some details being ironed out, but we feel pretty good about that date, and USA has published the national championships. Just real quick, the RRC obviously will be hosted in the TRU footprint. Gulf Coast will also be in the TRU footprint, we think, depending on how the negotiations go, but we are scheduled to host, and USA has not announced their Club 15s. Just real quick on RRC and TOLA, again, it's usually the same time frame. Phil has been desperately searching for somebody to help him run TOLA. We've talked to some people and engaged some people, but we're always looking for volunteers to help on the Seven side. And an email has gone out. All the reps on the Sevens committee have blessed the August 10th, 11th date as Club Championships Day. It's 2 weeks before Rugby Town. So again, location to be determined, but those dates should all be.
And one thing to note, Club 15's championships has moved 2 weeks earlier. So basically the choices are the weekend after Labor Day or Memorial Day weekend, or the weekend before Memorial Day weekend, because we're not going to do championships on Memorial Day weekend. And the Senior Club Council decided to move that to the weekend before Memorial Day instead of the weekend after, which for Texas and unions that compete seriously in sevens, that's a good thing. Gives a little bit of a break between your 15th season and your 7th season, and gives you an opportunity to spin up a sevens program and compete without running players completely into the ground. From a weather perspective, it also means a little bit cooler weather, and for those of us who can afford to play all winter long, and it gets hot as hell in the summer, that's a good thing. I can tell you that the Northeast and the Midwest clubs were not happy. They fought back against it because, if they can't get on the field until April, they like having more time in the spring. So it's always a fight and negotiation at that national level to get a date that the whole country will live with. Yep.
Yep, we're putting out the call for hosts. So like Dave mentioned, we know most of our dates. So we're already asking for hosts. We'll officially put this up on the website, but just so it's really clear, we've got 15 championships in April, and then we'll have the Gulf Coast, which we assume the TRU will hold. And then we're always looking for 7 series hosts. And then Mary Graham as well. We'll be looking for a host. So we'll put that up on the website. It'll be the normal process. I think one change we're making after the Huns hosted, we identified some areas that were more of a burden on the clubs that we hadn't known. So we're going back and looking at the budget, and whoever the new president is, we'll have to really look at it. But we've made some recommendations to where, like if you're Grand Prairie and you have to do porta potties and you need to order extra for the event, we kind of were like, yeah, whatever, how many do you need? We're going to just take care of that now, right? Like it just makes sense for us to help with those types of things. And then volunteers was another area that was hard for clubs to, if you're playing particularly, and we need ball runners and scoreboard people and things like that. We're going to try to help a little bit more as an organizational unit with those types of things. We don't really know what that means yet, but a little bit more money for you to help, and maybe you can make a profit. That's our goal. And then we'll help you organizationally as well. So just be on the lookout for a little bit more support next year as well. All right, so we're to, sorry, was there any questions?
I have a question more about around the scheduling and stuff like that. I know it's not particularly to these events, but back to the coaches and stuff like that. We got the schedule that Travis has worked on, but for us in North Texas, we can't play games and we can't guarantee that we will get games. D3 and D4, we rent City Fields, we don't get them if it rains, yeah. So our January and our December have been screwed over, and that's why we ended up with 7 games on the trot, which when we have numbers at 30, you know how that goes, yeah, people can't work, get off work every weekend. We want to be able to have some games in October in the cup, and we want them to be able to be in Rugby Explorer and all that. Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can negotiate your schedule and we'll do whatever you want.
But they will be available to play as cup games and that, they can be loaded in and all that. So if we talk to the other 2 sides that we want to move out of December, January.
Yeah.
And get them into
The
October,
refs,
early November.
and our MLR refs are begging for games.
Yeah,
in
that's
October.
fine.
So
Yeah.
you're gonna get good referees.
Yeah, referees that's the easiest time of year to do referees. Spring is the hardest time of year to do referees because you've got MLR and high school and club and, all at the same time. So referees early is easier. Work with the clubs and I can't stress this enough. Fill out the match change form. Let us know what change you've negotiated with a club and let us know at least 14 days in advance. Because if we get a match change request and say, hey, on a Thursday saying, hey, we're playing this Saturday, we can't guarantee a ref in that situation.
We need to also make sure.
We'll let TRA know. We'll do our best, but no promises.
Yeah.
Right.
But we need to make sure they're compliant with coaches and everything else by that.
Sure.
Correct, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'm green on my little ball, but they
Right,
might not be.
Right. And so, yeah, you want to talk with them and let them know because look, what we found is that if people got a cup game coming up, they find a way to get the stuff done. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if they know that they're not going to be playing until January, well, that's out of sight, out of mind.
That's right.
That's why I mentioned delays was you may not have any flexibility in that.
Okay.
Hey,
Cool.
Wendy.
Yeah.
Real quick, about the Mary Graham, do we have the selection camp dates and location yet?
Not quite yet. We're working on coaches this weekend. We're pretty close. So then they'll be coming out real fast. And we're gonna work around the known other women's dates like Bat City. And then I think there's a Quins tournament and we'll work around those as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be soon, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. Hopefully. All right, so TRU board elections, I wrote the slides because I was trying to fix them on my phone, so I'm gonna just go out of the presentation for a minute and we'll pull up the posting. So we posted these, well, first, just a thank you to Kirk. He is on his way out. He was nominated and he declined it. But we want to thank him for everything he's done. It's been a great 9 years. And I think, part of it has just been the compassion and empathy that he leads with has been really key, I think, to building rugby clubs and understanding. And, like that men's Z4 club was, not solely your idea, but you were a huge part of that. And then the summit, a lot your idea. I just did it.
Paul on here. Paul, are you still on the call? Let me show participants here. Look, okay, he did mention he may have to drop, so it does look like he dropped, but you can go read their statements and Paul has a statement of support. Oh, are you there?
Paul is on the call. It looks like he's muted right now.
Okay, is he still on?
Yeah, Paul,
iPhone?
you have to go to the app and unmute.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry. Technology. We're not good friends. So I'm here.
Okay, Paul, do you want to just take a quick moment and just you can address the audience and then they can ask any questions of you?
Sure. Hey, everybody, I'm Paul Lawrence. I started my rugby career back in 1983, Stephen F. Austin State University. Then I moved to Dallas and played with the Reds and played with SMU, played in Houston with Bay Area, the Roughnecks, and Galveston. So I've been around quite a while. I've held a few offices. I've been a officer in Bay Area for, I was vice president for 2 terms, and I've been social committee chairman for, it'll be 2 terms coming in this year. match secretary for SMU for 2 terms, and I think I was the match secretary at Roughnecks also for 2 terms. So I've been around quite a bit. I know quite a bit, the people. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Wendy, you and I started reffing about the same time. If I'm not yeah. So I remember a few meetings with you back in the old days. And so I've been taking part as best I can. I've also been coaching for the Spartans on the ladies Spartan side with their junior high and high school. So I'm got my hand pretty much, back in the rugby pool. So looking at this as the next step for helping rugby grow. And I heard everybody speaks about wanting rugby to grow. And that was the first that I learned years ago, that rugby is such a cool sport for those of us that need to find a place, and we need to keep it alive. So the rest of the men and women that need a place have a place.
Thank you, Paul.
Because I got at the last minute, I was shuttled down to Galveston to help them with their tournament. So I'm actually standing right here on the beach. That's the traffic noise in the background. Sorry.
No problem. We are having a little bit of a connection issue, but does anybody want to ask any questions of Paul? Okay, doesn't look like it. So thank you, Paul.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. And then our other nominee, Dave McPhail. If you want to go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Again, I think most of you know me, or I've been around for a while. My statement kind of outlines everything. Mr. Norton so graciously put my name forward. Obviously, I served on the board, served as president, and served in a lot of roles. Successfully got to retire after Kirk took over and let me hide in peace and spend time with my family. A couple of years ago, Phil Cupins, Sevens chair, said, "Hey, I really need some help. You used to run the Sevens chair. Can you help me rebuild it? We need to move forward." I told him 2 conditions: no meetings, no phone calls. Okay. And then I said, I would go to the tournament, I'll do the work, but I don't want to sit in meetings. I don't want to be on phone calls. That's on you. Phil kept dragging me in piece by piece. Started working with Mr. Dodge. He asked me to come out and help with the Gulf Coast 2 years ago. Said I would, I'd be happy to. Shortly after that, Mr. Dodge transitioned to senior club council, asked if I would stand for chair for the competition committee, which I said, sure, I'll be glad to do it. Wasn't expecting it. Of course, that meant meetings and phone calls. So broke my promise to my wife and myself. And then unfortunately, Kirk has decided to move on after 9 great years. So I was not anticipating standing here in front of you as of 2 weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Norton, again. I've enjoyed working on the RRC. It's been a lot of fun. I have a passion for it. Obviously, I have extensive work on the board at various levels. Just real quick, who likes the financial statement that we put up on the board? Anybody? Anybody hate it?
I hate it.
Well, that was one I built like 12 years ago. So that was my creation.
I took his format and I just run with it for 9 years. That is, I did not create it. So if you hate Comic Sans font.
That guy.
That was 12 years ago. So anyway, so that was something, that was a legacy that still stands today. And a legacy that I am proud of is I had a direct hand, if I feel I did.
You absolutely did.
Bringing Wendy onto this group.
Yeah.
I had a direct hand of bringing Scott Courtney onto this group. Right? 2 people, and actually a third, your current treasurer, Dave Flager, who I brought onto this group. So those are 3 non-voting people that when I was back serving, have stood onto this board, never ran for election, but have continued while I was working and serving, while Kirk was working and serving. So as a person, I feel very proud that those 3 people are still here today. So going forward, again, I'm 9 years older. Hopefully I'm a little more mellower. Yes, I can be a bit of a firebrand. I understand it, but I do have a passion, right? I'm here to serve. Wolfie's drugged me into many things before, and I always say yes. I said yes to Mr. Norton. If he would not stand, I actually tried to use Robert rules in the outside lobby area to bring him back. It did not work.
But I do believe I have the experience, I have the connections, I've worked with these people. People have asked me to come back into important roles. And I believe I can help provide this union service going forward in his absence.
And I will just say that whoever is elected, Paul or Dave, I'm more than happy to help and to be available and to make that transition as smooth as possible. I moved to Colorado 2 years ago to be closer to my parents and my dad's farm, and folks are in their 80s. And so for me, it's really between COVID and then moving to Colorado, it's been 4 years since I've been on the field with Texas rugby players week in and week out, whereas when I was coaching, I was seeing y'all all the time. And so I really feel like I'm got some distance from your day-to-day experience that makes me not as confident that I know what y'all need. And that, like I said, I'm in a place in life where I've got some family stuff that I need to be focusing on. But my passion for the game, my love for the Texas Rugby Union, and my desire to see this organization be successful is undiminished. And I will, make myself available to help whoever y'all choose, every way I can.
Any questions for Dave?
So if you're chair of RRRC and president, aren't you doubling your calls?
Luckily, they're a week apart. I put in my statement.
There's no conflict of interest there.
There's conflicts, yes and no. I put in my statement that the next phone call we have with the board, or we can send out an email if we want to do it sooner for the RRC board, excuse me, was obviously I don't have a vote unless it's a tie. So I'm there to facilitate meetings. I'm not there to vote on meetings. So I will let the membership decide how they want to move forward and what pace they want to move forward, whether it's calling for a new person, time overlapping and votes and so on and so forth. I will fully admit I am going to World Cup.
That's fine.
And
Like we've said, most of the competition work is done.
I know. But I will be
So.
gone the next scheduled board meeting
Yeah.
if that happens. So just FYI, I'm not running away, but I will be in Europe. So I will let the RRC decide how they want to move forward. And we'll, whatever they choose is what I think is a responsible thing. It makes sense for me to step down. But again, it's the membership that drives the ship. I'm just here to look at the stars and try and point us in the right direction.
I will say there's precedent. Kirk served the dual role.
I did for a year. I had an overlap where I was the RRC chair and the TRU president, then rotated off the RRC to just focus on president. You can do it. Just in general, my belief is spread the wealth. And the more people we can get engaged and involved, the more we build an experience base and redundancies and that kind of thing. So, but it's doable. I've done it. I have no confidence. I have no doubt that. No doubt that he can also do it. And no confidence in our ability to speak succinctly and clearly.
Anybody else? Questions? Okay, cool. Then, thank you, Dave. We'll go to Red River nominees now.
We're gonna, I guess, not cover any talk about the RRC schedule.
No, not, yeah.
Just wanna make sure.
Yeah. All right, so Red River, there were 5 open spots because it's a rotating everybody gets 2 years. And so we do the every other. So there's always a nomination process. Men's D1, John Dale was nominated again and he accepted. He was the only, he wasn't the only one, but everyone else declined. So thank you for those that did get nominated, and it's okay that you declined, right? So good job, John Dale. You're back. Men's D2, we've got Gordon, Glenn, and Alec. And I think, let me see who was online. Jeff Kloberg and other Jeff are on. Okay, so we'll go, Glenn is here. So why don't we go with Glenn? Do you want to speak for a moment? You don't have to, it's up to you. Okay. Gordon, did you want to say anything? Okay, do we have any questions for Glenn or Gordon? Let's keep the meeting moving. Let's go. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions for these two gents? Okay, cool. Women's, we have Haley Hunter and Caitlin, and Caitlin's here. Is Haley in here? Sorry, other Caitlin's here. Yeah, the at-large is one. Okay, so their statements are on the site. And then men's D3, Jeff, he is online. Do you want to say anything, Jeff? You win, so it's up to you.
No, thanks, everybody. Happy to represent the D3 clubs. So that's
Thank
all. Keep it moving.
Awesome. Yes, they were not nominated and again,
If
yeah.
I can interrupt.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, you're right. I meant to put an asterisk.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, so if I can interrupt the process real quick, I do want to acknowledge that, John stepped down graciously to the point where it was not because he wasn't interested in running, but he was doing it for the betterment of the division. So as RRC chair, one of the spots we do have on the board is an at-large appointed solely by the chair. And I will be appointing John to the committee formally as the at-large position, but John did it solely.
Yes. Thank you, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so then the elected, sorry, I pulled it out. Elected at large. We have Jeff Kohlberg online. Jeff, are you with us? Doesn't have his camera on anymore. We'll give him a second. All right. And then Ross is in the TRRA meeting, but he submitted a statement. I would just say on Ross's behalf, it's an interesting, and Dave and I had to have some conversations because technically our bylaws indicate you have to be a TRU member, but TRRA is an affiliate member. So I think we're kind of like, okay, cool, right? And he's doing it because when you read his statement, it won't be a surprise, but he asked me to mention this. He has had double hip surgery to help with an issue that he's had. So he won't be refereeing for the next year. So he was wanting to be more involved. So he just wanted me to mention that. And I thought that was admirable of him.
And we also had Kat serving in a role previously.
Yeah. Yeah. So then Rob Walker is not here, I don't think. Okay. And then Carlos, I don't think is here either. Curly, did you want to? Sorry, I keep mixing these up. Yeah. Sorry. I keep mixing them up. Caitlin, did you want to say anything? Okay. Cool. Yeah, I skipped you earlier. Sorry. Okay. You've already made your deal. Okay, cool. Awesome. Perfect. So then I think that's it for committee, and let's see. So then I think we're just a general Q&A. We just always leave a little bit of time to just ask anything that you didn't ask or anything that came up.
Anything? Bueller?
Yeah, let's drink. Okay. All right. So the next meeting will be, unless the new elected president changes it, we generally do it in August. So we'll just keep that as that. But thank you, everybody, for coming.
Hey, guys, thank you. Really.